The millionaire is shocked to learn the black beggar helped his elderly father in secret. The city was alive, thrumming with ambition and secrets, much like the streets Larissa walked every day. She hustled between coffee cups and room keys at the hotel, dreaming of bright courtrooms and legal battles. Evening shifted to night, and beneath the neon lights, she spotted an elderly man stumbling near the curb. His clothes were tattered, his hands trembled, yet his eyes glinted with a hidden fire. Without a second thought, Larissa dashed forward, catching him as he fell. The world around them blurred. The sounds of taxis and laughter faded, revealing only her heartbeat and his shaky breaths. She saw it all. The deep lines of worry etched into his face, the frailty of his frame, and the gratitude that flickered in his tired eyes. Unbeknownst to her, this man was Albert Thompson, the estranged father of Edward, a local business magnate shrouded in wealth and scandal. A single act of rumors erupted at college, fueled by the jealous Natalia, eager to spread tales of Larissa's mysterious, newfound connection to a millionaire, twisting each word with venom. How could she handle the weight of their whispers? The pressure built like a dark storm over her head, leaving her feeling desperate and cornered. She needed a friend to untangle this mess. Just when despair reached its peak, Albert appeared, a figure from the shadows. He reached out with a frail hand, offering solace and unexpected support. "You don't know who I am, do you?" he asked, a hint of mischief in his voice. In that moment, a light flicked on inside Larissa. The tangled roots of their lives began revealing themselves, unearthing connections that could reshape her future. Meanwhile, Edward uncovered a shocking secret in his family's past, linking him inexorably to Larissa, an intertwining that felt cosmic and chaotic. Their paths were forever changed, but how would they face the truths that haunt? A decision loomed as Larissa and Edward prepared to meet, each weighed down by their own revelations. What awaited them could smash the fragile bond they had begun to nurture. And just when hope felt achievable, an unexpected twist surged through the air, a truth neither was ready to accept. Would this reveal shatter their fragile connection, or was there a way forward through the chaos? She felt a knot twist tighter, making her wonder if the wildest dreams of a lawyer were closer than she thought, or if destiny had a more painful plan in mind. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without prior notice. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you are still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming up. And since you're here, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, NT, she fished it out, expecting a message from her mom or maybe a notification from the college group chat. Instead, it was a link, a news article titled "Local Millionaire Edward Thompson Involved in Family Scandal." Panic clawed at her throat. The words blurred as she tried to read, the headline casting a shadow over the moment. She felt Edward's presence shift beside her, a sudden tension electrifying the air. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice low. But she could hear the concern behind it. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled down. The article detailed hidden affairs, illicit dealings, and the staggering amount of money funneled into questionable investments, all tied back to this family name. And then it struck like a lightning bolt. Edward's mother, Mary Thompson, was once married before his father to a man who disappeared under suspicious circumstances. She met Edward's gaze, searching for something, any glimmer of the confidence he often radiated. But instead, uncertain. "Edward, your family, they might be involved in something beyond just business. There are secrets." His expression shifted, the charm fading. Suddenly, she heard the honking of cars, laughter echoing from the nearby bar. But it all felt distant, like echoes from another life. I know about the accusations, but it's not how it appears. Before she could respond, a man crashed into the sidewalk, the force sending debris scattering. He staggered, groaning in pain, clutching his arm. The commotion drew a crowd, and for a moment, everyone turned away from them. Larissa's heart raced, fear curling in her stomach. "Call an ambulance," someone screamed, and suddenly chaos erupted. But Edward stood still, eyes wide, as if a switch had flipped in his mind. "No," he said, voice low and wild. "I know him," Larissa asked, confused, unable to break her gaze from the scene. Before Edward could answer, the wounded man raised his head, revealing a face twisted with recognition. "Edward, it's me. It's Uncle Jim." Time stopped. The crowd murmured, confusion rippling through the air. Larissa's heart pounded in her chest as she glanced between Edward and the man who claimed to be family. "Uncle Jim?" Edward whispered, shock transforming his face. "You're supposed to be dead?" "Yeah, well, surprise!" Uncle Jim chuckled weakly, but his laughter twisted into a cough. "You have to listen to me. They're coming for you. For all of us." The air turned electric, like a time bomb ticking down. Edward's world rocked, and Larissa felt the ground shifting under her feet. Everything she thought she knew, a simple connection of kindness, a budding relationship turned complex, collapsed in an instant. "What do you mean?" Edward's hands trembled, and Larissa felt the panic spread like wildfire. Voices buzzed around them, but all she could focus on was the dread pooling in her stomach. "Your mother. She was involved in more than you know. It was never just a business scandal. It's a whole network. They'll stop at nothing to protect themselves." Uncle Jim's voice was urgent, eyes darting despite the blood trickling down his forehead. Larissa gasped, the words ripping through her. The secrets, the lies. They weren't just casual whispers, but deep, haunting shadows entwining their lives. All at once the moment crushed her again. Like a wave crashing over her head, she turned to Edward, his face pale, mouth parted in disbelief. This wasn't just their lives anymore. It was a much larger web, and she was caught right in the middle. With Uncle Jim's words hanging in the air, their fragile bond started to fray. A choice loomed larger than either could fathom. Would they fight together against the storm brewing, or would the weight of this new discovery shatter whatever connection they had begun to forge? And just as that thought settled, the sound of sirens pierced through the chaos, growing louder, closer, promising either salvation or doom. The sirens wailed closer, but the world around them seemed to freeze in time. Uncle Jim's words echoed like crashing waves, threatening to pull them under. Larissa's heart hammered in her chest, the dread pooling inside her like a dark storm. Edward stood there, face pale, shock etched in every feature. "Uncle Jim, you can't be... What are you saying? There's a network?" Edward's voice trembled. Fear came. "Your mother is involved deeper than you can imagine. You have to believe me." Uncle Jim clutched his arm, pain stealing his breath. The crowd around them surged forward, whispers buzzing like angry bees. "This isn't happening," Larissa whispered to herself, frustration battling with disbelief. Edward was still staring at Uncle Jim, processing as if time had stretched into forever. Suddenly, an unexpected voice sliced through the chaos. "Let me through. I'm a doctor." A woman pushed her way through the gathered crowd, determination in her eyes. But when she reached Uncle Jim, her face blanched. "Jim? Oh my God, what happened?" She knelt, instantly assessing the wound. "I'm fine," he grunted between clenched teeth. "They'll come for him. For all of us." "What is he talking about?" Larissa felt the ground slipping away. Before anyone could respond, a loud bang erupted, drawing gasps. A black van screeched to a halt at the curb, tires screeching. Windows rolled down, revealing men in dark suits, faces concealed by sunglasses. The atmosphere turned icy. Panic swept through onlookers. "Run!" someone shouted. Feet scattered in every direction, but Larissa felt rooted. "Edward, we need to go." She grabbed his arm, her fingers trembling. "No!" "I need to hear this." Edward's voice was wild, desperate now. "Don't be stupid." But the moment slipped from her grasp. Uncle Jim struggled up on shaking legs. "You don't understand. They're coming after the truth." Panic loaded his voice. "You need to trust me." Then, before Larissa could even react, the men in suits leaped out of the van, intent and focused, heading straight for them. "Edward, we need to—" But it happened in an instant. One of the men lunged for Uncle Jim. In a flash, the crowd erupted as chaos consumed them. Edward shouted something, but it drowned in the noise. The doctor was already on the phone, urgently calling for backup, her eyes darting to the approaching threat. "Stay back! You're not taking him!" A sudden jolt surged through the crowd as Edward pushed toward Uncle Jim instead. "Get away from him!" The men moved swiftly, but as they got closer, something shocking broke through the chaos. "You are all fools for staying here," one of the suited men bellowed, his voice like ice. "We own this city." In that split second, one of the men turned to Edward. "You don't know what's really going on with your heritage, do you?" Her heart raced. What did he mean? Edward's face twisted as he struggled against the weight of the revelation. "What are you talking about?" But before the man could respond, another bang echoed sharply through the air. This time, it wasn't just the sound of chaos. A gunshot rang out. Larissa froze, breath caught in her throat. All eyes turned to Edward, who stood there, expression shifting from shock to horror. He staggered back, clutching at his chest. Blood seeped through his fingers, staining his shirt. "Edward!" Larissa screamed, reaching out, but everything exploded around her. Shouts, confusion, and uncertainty blurred into chaos. She felt the ground tremble beneath her. This was a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. As medics fled toward them, the men in suits started retreating, the pulse of danger still thick in the air. Edward's eyes met hers, filled with a mix of fear and understanding. "Larissa, help me," he gasped, and everything screamed at her. This would change everything. Secrets hung heavy around them, waiting to unravel. And in that moment of anguish, she knew that those tangled connections could either save them or tear them apart completely. It felt like the beginning of the end. Larissa could only hope there was still a way forward. But the question loomed large. Would it be out of the darkness or straight into the abyss? As the sirens grew louder, the world spun around Larissa. Edward's shaky breaths pierced through the chaos filling her mind. Blood seeped through his fingers as he pressed against the wound. "Larissa," his voice broke, raw with fear. "Stay with me, Edward. Help is coming." She grabbed his shoulders, trying to anchor him, to force the panic away. The doctor worked frantically, urgency fueling her every move. But Larissa's focus remained glued to Edward's fading color. The crowd surged, panic rising like a tidal wave. Shouts of confusion mixed with the sirens, echoing in her head. What did Uncle Jim mean? She whispered, searching Edward's eyes for answers. But before he could respond, the suited men shot glances at each other and exchanged harsh words. One of them gestured towards the chaos, his smile cruel. "Get him. We don't have time to play." That shook Larissa to her core. She clutched Edward tighter. "They can't take you. We need to go." Suddenly, Uncle Jim leaned closer, his eyes frantic. "You don't know the truth about your family, Edward." In that moment, his words struck like lightning. "What do you mean?" Edward's confusion swirled along with the chaos. But then, like a locked door thrown wide open, everything shifted. The two suited men lunged toward them. But in that split second, something overwhelming erupted from the crowd. An explosion ripped through the pavement nearby, sending everyone sprawling. The blast echoed in Larissa's ears, drowning out the cries and panic swirling around them. She felt a force knock her off her feet, and everything disintegrated into a blur of smoke and chaos. When the dust began to settle, she blinked back tears and found herself face to face with Edward, who lay sprawled on the ground, eyes wide, moonlight hugging his skin. But it wasn't just shock on his face. It morphed into something darker, deeper, and utterly haunting. "Edward?" Instead of answering, he stared past her, as if searching through the rubble of the night. No, it can't be. "Edward, what's happening?" And then, from the shadows, a woman emerged. Her face was shrouded in darkness, but Larissa felt the weight of recognition. "Not supposed to see you like this. Not yet," she said, her voice an icy whisper, laced with familiarity. "Mom?" Edward's voice cracked, the name tumbling from his lips like a curse. Larissa trembled as the woman stepped closer, revealing herself Unday. "Edward, it's not what you think." "What do you mean? What have you hidden?" As if a dam broke, Uncle Jim rose, blood still dripping from his brow. "Mary, why are you here? You shouldn't have—" But before he could finish, they all turned their eyes to Edward, who now wore a look of betrayal and confusion, boiling just below the surface. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice low and edged with fury. "What is going on? Are you involved in this?" The air stood thick with tension. "You have no idea how deep it runs," Mary's voice cracked, and in that moment it all began to shift again. "Our family, it's built on lies." "What lies?" Larissa pressed, the fear twisting her stomach. "There's something you need to know, something about you," Mary said, her gaze unwavering. And with those words, a chill wound its way through the chaos, unraveling the fabric of everything Larissa thought she understood. A truth, buried deep, began to claw its way to the surface. Before she could grasp what it all meant, more black vans rolled up, their engines rumbling ominously. And as Edward's eyes widened in horror, the ground beneath them felt unstable, as if shifting under the weight of something monumental. In that moment, Larissa felt like she stood on the brink of something terrible, an edge so stark she could hardly breathe. And then the words cracked loose from Mary's lips, heavy with anguish. "You're not who you think you are." Time froze. Everything hung in the balance. The truth could change everything, and as the world roared back to life around them, Larissa found herself staring into an abyss she never saw. "You're not who you think you are," Mary had said, words heavy with a truth she couldn't grasp. The shadows loomed around them, twisting everything familiar into something ominous. "What do you mean?" Edward demanded, his voice tight, barely contained. He looked back at Larissa, searching her eyes for answers she didn't have. "We've been living in a lie," Mary whispered, desperation creeping into her tone. She glanced around, wary of the approaching suits. "Your father, he isn't who you think he is either. None of this is simple, Edward. Your whole life has been built on deceptions." "Stop! Just stop!" The words burst from Larissa, a raw need for clarity. She couldn't wrap her head around the chaos swirling around them. "What are you talking about?" But before Mary could respond, a chilling sound pierced the night. The sharp crack of gunfire rang out once more. Instantly, chaos erupted again. The crowd gasped and scattered, adrenaline surging. Larissa's body froze in place. She watched as Mary staggered back, hand clutching her shoulder. She brought her hand down, glistening crimson staining her palm. "Mom!" Edward's voice cracked, and he lunged toward her. But the suited men surged forward, intent on grabbing Uncle Jim. "Get away from her!" Edward shouted, fury igniting in his eyes. As the crowd surged backward, a man in a black suit grabbed Mary by the arm, pulling her toward the waiting van. "You've made a huge mistake," he sneered, eyes cold and calculating. "Edward, run!" Uncle Jim shouted, and that snapped Larissa from her daze. But it was too late. In a split second, everything shattered. A man with a steely gaze aimed his weapon, eyes locked on Uncle Jim. "You think you can just expose this? You'll regret it." "Listen to Uncle Jim," Larissa urged, panic spilling over. "We need to get out of here, now!" But the chaos was too deep, too wild. Edward stared wide-eyed, but he was locked in place. He needed to process all the new truths. "Go, I'll be fine." Uncle Jim coughed out, the bravado fading. And just then, like a slap to the face, a shocking revelation escaped Mary's lips. "Edward, your real father, it's Jim." The world around them silenced. Time froze. "What? No, that can't be." Edward's face twisted, disbelief etching deep lines of confusion. But as the words hung in the air, Uncle Jim's eyes sparked with something fierce. "It's true, your mother and I. It was all a cover-up. Your father, he was never who you thought." Edward stumbled back, the weight of the truth crushing him. So all this while? Suddenly, the suited men moved with lethal precision, closing in. "This ends tonight," one of them shouted, sinister intent blazing in their gaze. In that moment, Larissa felt her life hang in the balance. The darkness closed in, chaotic and threatening, like shadows whispering secrets she wasn't ready to hear. Then, as if on cue, the ground shook and an explosion erupted nearby. Dust and debris rained down, sending both suited men and bystanders reeling. It broke the spell of reality, sending Larissa stumbling backwards. "Go!" Larissa screamed, feeling Edward's hand slip from her grasp. She lunged forward, pulling him back. "We can find the truth later. We need to escape." But he looked at her, confusion and fear marring his face. "I need to know." "Not now. There's no time." She tugged him hard, urgency clawing through her. Through the chaos, her heart raced. What if everything they thought they knew had been nothing but a carefully constructed web of lies? What if Edward was right? What if the truth was more tangled than they could ever grasp? As the sirens wailed even louder, Larissa felt the weight of decisions loom larger. They were entering a nightmare where the darkness had teeth, and every secret chased them deeper. With the ground quaking beneath their feet, she knew they weren't just fighting for their lives anymore. They were fighting for their very identities. What lay ahead was uncertain. But in that moment, uncertainty was the only certainty. And as the explosion echoed, the world might just change forever. The explosion faded into a haunting echo, dust swirling through the air like ghosts from the past. Larissa felt a knot in her stomach as she stumbled backward, trying to process the chaos surging around them. Edward lay there, eyes wide and confused, the weight of his mother's revelation hanging heavy. But something inside her sparked. The van was too close. They needed to run. "Edward, now!" she shouted, gripping his arm, but he was still caught in the storm of disbelief. "Mom, you knew?" His voice cracked, and Larissa could feel the tremor in his hands, fear mixed with horror. "What's happening?" "Edward, focus!" The urgency burned in her voice. The suited men shifted like predators, watching and waiting, every muscle in their bodies taut, ready to strike. Then, something shattered through the cacophony of voices around them. A shot rang out, and in that moment, time snapped back into focused reality. A woman's voice cut through the din. "Edward, come with me." Larissa turned, eyes wide as she saw a familiar face emerge from the crowd. Natalia, the very person who had spread rumors about her. But it was more than just a friend in a crisis. There was something desperate and frantic in Natalia's eyes that Larissa had never seen before. Before Larissa could react, Natalia lunged forward, grabbing Edward's hand. "We have to go, now!" "Let go of him!" Larissa yelled, fear clawing at her throat. She didn't trust Natalia. Not now. But Edward hesitated. "Wait, what do you know?" "Too much. too much. Just trust me. Natalia nearly screamed, glancing over her shoulder. Trust you? Larissa shot back, anger rising within her. But in the instant of hesitation, an ominous figure appeared behind Natalia. Nice try, one of the suited men sneered. He stepped forward, eyes dark with menace. No, Larissa yelled, lunging to protect Edward. But time moved too slowly. Then it happened. Before she could even blink, Natalia twisted around and pulled a gun from her coat, pointing it right at Edward. I'm sorry, Ed, but it's too late for trust. Shock ripped through the air, freezing every heartbeat around them. The buzz of the crowd dulled into a heavy silence, leaving only the frantic sound of Larissa's breathing. Nat, what are you doing? Edward stammered, the color draining from his face. The malice in Natalia's eyes mixed with something else, a desperate kind of fear. It's the only way to save us, Edward. You have to understand. Save us? By pointing a gun at him? Larissa shrieked, disbelief surging through her. I didn't want this. I didn't want any of this, Natalia shouted, her voice cracking. But they'll kill you. They'll kill us all. As those words hit, clarity flooded Larissa's mind. This wasn't just about them anymore. The black suits closing in, Uncle Jim's warnings, everything was spiraling into a darker truth that felt insurmountable. Put the gun down, Natalia, Edward pleaded, hands raised in a shaky surrender. We can figure this out. But then, as if summoned by the very tension in the air, another figure stepped out from the shadows, Edward's mother, Mary. Her face was pale, eyes stark. No, this has to end, she cried, voice rising with a desperate edge. Mom? Edward's shock turned to confusion, then anger. What are you doing here? Edward, listen to me. You have to leave. Now. She stepped closer, but the gun pointed unwaveringly at her son. Stop. You're all lying, Edward shot back, frustrated tears brimming. I don't know who to trust anymore. And in that moment, a crack of lightning illuminated the sky. Dark clouds boiling overhead. The ground shook violently and the world tilted. Then came the heart-stopping truth. Natalia's hands trembled, fingers tightening on the trigger. This isn't just about us anymore. They know everything. Suddenly, a chilling silence enveloped them, the weight of revelation blanketing every breath. Before anyone could move, the sound of rushing footsteps echoed in the night. An army of men in suits poured into the street, positioning themselves like wolves surrounding their prey. They'd come for blood. Edward's breath hitched. They can't take us. But as the van doors swung wide, Larissa felt a deep-rooted fear seep into her bones. Who were they really fighting against? As everything exploded into chaos again, Larissa glanced toward Edward, his face torn between the pain of betrayal and the flicker of hope. They had entered a labyrinth of lies, and now stood before the heart of darkness. In that moment, she knew whatever came next would change everything. And as she took a step forward, ready to fight against the unfolding nightmare, she felt the ground tremble beneath her, a foreboding reminder that the truth had teeth. And it was ready to strike. The explosion echoed, dust swirling like a veil around them. Panic wrapped their minds, suffocating and thick. Larissa felt the adrenaline racing through her veins as she grabbed Edward's hand, urgency spurring her into action. We need to go, she urged, but he stood frozen, shock painting his features. Natalia kept the gun pointed, eyes wild. This is for your own good, Ed. You don't understand. Put the gun down, Larissa shouted, her heart pounding, the urgency clawing at her throat. We can figure this out without violence. But before Natalia could respond, Mary staggered forward, shouted something, but the noise of the crowd drowned her words. Then chaos erupted again. The suited men swarmed forward, their intent clear and lethal. You're not getting away from us, one yelled, moving dangerously close, eyes locked on Edward. "Run!" Uncle Jin shouted, his voice strained. But a chilling realization washed over Larissa. There was nowhere to run to. She glanced at Edward, fear mixing with a desperate need to protect him. But as she looked back toward the suited men, the dark-clad figures didn't seem to move in for capture. They stood still, eyes flickering toward something behind her. A collective silence descended, thick like fog. Every passerby turned toward the same direction, murmurs rippling through the crowd. "Is that?" someone gasped, spotting the figure pushing through the dust. A man approached, tall and commanding, his presence igniting a strange familiarity. Edward squinted, eyes widening as recognition hit. "No, it can't be," he muttered. And just like that, every breath in the air stilled. The man stepped closer, face emerging from the haze. "Hello, son," came a voice as smooth as honey, but cold as ice. "I've missed you." "Dad?" Edward's voice barely came out, incredulity mixing with confusion. His mouth opened and closed, disbelief etched deep on his face. The crowd gasped. "Edward, listen!" the man continued, stepping up to his son, but was interrupted as the suited men rushed forward, one of them yelling, "Capture him! He can't ruin everything." "He's not going anywhere," Edward shouted, splitting the air with desperation. "You don't know what I've been through." The man, the one who once vanished, stood before them all, face taut with tension. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I've come to set things right." The atmosphere was electric. "Set what right?" Mary's voice erupted, a mix of anger and vulnerability. "You left us. You chose this life." "Mom, stop." Edward leaned in closer, trying to process. "Who are you?" he demanded, his heart racing, raw disbelief warming the back of his throat. Then the moment twisted. As his father reached out, Natalia panicked. "I can't let you take him. I can't!" She squeezed the trigger. Time slowed. Bang! The bullets split the air, impacting into Edward's father's shoulder. Larissa gasped, the horror striking deep, a physical punch to the gut. He fell back, horror painting his face, blood seeping down his shirt like a dark promise of chaos. "No!" Edward screamed, rushing forward, panic igniting his every move. As the world seemed to come apart at the seams, Natalia stumbled back. I didn't mean to. I'm so sorry." Edward's father lay sprawled on the pavement, eyes piercing, gaze locked on his son. "I've always watched over you. I had to," he breathed, words laced with pain. "What have you done?" Edward's voice broke, tears mixing with his fury. The truth of his father's long-standing, haunting absence twisted into a raw wound, and the suited men moved again, chaos unfurling like a storm. But the true chaos had already unraveled. Edward's father was alive, and now lay bleeding before them, stitched into a tapestry of lies that had been pulled apart. Larissa's heart raced. She looked from Edward to the father he barely knew, and in that moment, everything cracked wide open. This was more than they'd ever imagined. A truth was born from betrayal, and the very bond that connected them all began to crumble. As she turned, the sirens blared, but they were no longer just sounds of safety. They were harbingers of a deeper doom. With her heart racing, Larissa understood. This wouldn't just change their lives. It would shatter everything they believed. And in the distance, through the chaos, shadows flickered, shadows darker than night, following their every move. As the smoke thinned and chaos reigned, everything felt like it was happening in slow motion. Larissa couldn't shake the panic rising in her chest. Edward's father lay bleeding on the ground, reality unraveling around them like a toxic thread. "Dad!" Edward's voice shattered through the din, laced with agony. The crowd recoiled, eyes wide and uncertain. Everything hung suspended, a tightrope stretched over an abyss of confusion. Natalia stood frozen, the gun trembling in her hand. "I didn't mean to. I thought." A rushing flood of regret washed over her, spilling from her eyes like rain in the storm. The suited men shifted closer, their expressions hard as stone. "Enough," one of them barked, dark eyes glinting, like a predator circling its prey. In that moment, something caught Larissa's attention. A figure appeared at the edge of the crowd, just beyond the chaos. It was a girl, young but fierce, her hair wild like a flame against the darkened street. She pushed through the throng, determination set in her jaw, a shine of urgency in their eyes. "Stop this now," she shouted, her voice slicing through the tension like a knife. The suited men paused, glancing back. She looked familiar, but it took a second for Larissa to realize. It was Clara, her childhood friend who had vanished years ago. "Clara?" Larissa gasped, heart lurching. "What are you doing here?" Clara darted closer, her eyes darting between Edward and Nathaniel's father, then the gun. "You need to listen to me, all of you. There's something you don't understand." "Understand what?" Edward snapped, voice edged with frustration. "My father is bleeding out, and you want to give me a lesson?" "I knew you would find him," Clara said, her voice rising with urgency. "But it's more complicated than you think. He's not just your father." "What do you mean?" Larissa felt the ground roll under her feet, confusion swirling. The bullets of truth, fired too fast for anyone to catch. Before Clara could answer, the ground shook again, this time deeper, vibrating like a drum. Then a loud crash exploded from the distance, sending shards of fear through Larissa. "What now?" she shouted, grabbing Edward's arm, urging him toward Clara. And then it happened. A loud crash, like thunder on a clear day, a massive flash, filled the sky above. Something, or someone, was coming from the heavens. Larissa squinted, heart racing as she searched the shadows. And then it pierced through the smoke, a helicopter. It hovered just above the crowd, spotlight sweeping across the chaos, illuminating the panic-stricken faces. "Get down!" Edward shouted, pulling Larissa to the pavement. The world spun into violence as the suited men began retreating, scrambling in the chaos, slinging curses as they fought against the wind whipping around them. The drop door opened, and armed figures spilled out, descending like avenging angels, weapons drawn. They pointed right at Edward's father. "Take him," one shouted, voice cold and detached. "We've got a job to finish." Edward's eyes went wide, confusion morphing into horror. "No, don't, he's not—" But he was cut off as the ground surged beneath them. The scene exploded into momentary silence, the world holding its breath. And in that moment of chaos, Clara turned to Larissa, eyes piercing, wide with urgency. "You need to trust me. The truth is darker than any of you could ever fathom." "What truth?" Larissa felt a tightening grip around her heart as she saw Edward struggle, his father writhing in pain. "I'll explain later. Just know this. Your connection to him is not what you think. There's so much more. You're wrapped in secrets, and they've been watching us for years." Clara's eyes locked onto Edward, sincerity radiating from her words. The helicopter roared overhead, slicing the night like a blade. The men with weapons descended with ruthless efficiency, closing in, determination driving them like wolves in pursuit. Larissa felt the panic rise like a tide. Every part of her wanted to flee, to drag Edward away from the darkness closing in. But Clara's words throbbed in her mind, heavy with meaning. And as Edward began to struggle against the tide of chaos, another round of gunfire erupted. Everything blurred, feelings tied in knots as she tried to process all at once. In a flash of desperation, Clara reached out, grabbing Larissa's wrist. "We have to move." But just as they turned, the unexpected happened. A sharp crack reverberated in the air, and in an instant, Edward's father lunged forward, gasping, "Run! They're not here for you!" Larissa froze, confusion gripping her. "Trust me, it's all a trap." And just before anyone could comprehend what that meant, the loudest bang rocked their world, louder than the gunfire, shaking their very core. Everything shifted like a waking nightmare, and as the dust settled, the haunting truth loomed over them, powerful and dark. What trap? And who was really in charge? The whirlwind of doubt spiraled as chaos erupted around them, relationships fracturing. But now, more than anything, unanswered questions loomed larger than the night itself. They were caught in a web thicker than blood, and now they had to find a way out before it swallowed them whole. The explosion faded into a haunting echo, dust swirling like a veil around them. Panic wrapped their minds, suffocating and thick. Larissa felt the adrenaline racing through her veins as she grabbed Edward's hand, urgency spurring her into action. "We need to go," she urged, but he stood frozen, shock painting his features. Natalia kept the gun pointed, eyes wild. "This is for your own good, Ed. You don't understand." "Put the gun down," Larissa shouted, her heart pounding, the urgency clawing at her throat. "We can figure this out without violence." But before Natalia could respond, Mary staggered forward, shouting something, but the noise of the crowd drowned her words. Then chaos erupted again. The suited men swarmed forward, their intent clear and lethal. "You're not getting away from us," one yelled, moving dangerously close, eyes locked on Edward. "Run!" Uncle Jim shouted, his voice strained. But a chilling realization washed over Larissa. There was nowhere to run to. She glanced at Edward, fear mixing with a desperate need to protect him. But as she looked back toward the suited men, the dark-clad figures didn't seem to move in for capture. They stood still, eyes flickering toward something behind her. A collective silence descended, thick like fog. Every passerby turned toward the same direction, murmurs rippling through the crowd. "Is that?" someone gasped, spotting the figure pushing through the dust. A man approached, tall and commanding, his presence igniting a strange familiarity. Edward squinted, eyes widening as recognition hit. "No, it can't be," he muttered, and just like that, every breath in the air stilled. The man stepped closer, face emerging from the haze. "Hello, son," came a voice as smooth as honey, but cold as ice. "I've missed you." "Dad?" Edward's voice barely came out, incredulity mixing with confusion. His mouth opened and closed, disbelief etched deep on his face. The crowd gasped. "Edward, listen," the man continued, stepping up to his son, but was interrupted as the suited men rushed forward, one of them yelling, "Capture him! He can't ruin everything!" "He's not going anywhere," Edward shouted, splitting the air with desperation. "You don't know what I've been through." The man, the one who once vanished, stood before them all, face taut with tension. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I've come to set things right." The atmosphere was electric. "Set what right?" Mary's voice erupted, a mix of anger and vulnerability. "You left us. You chose this life." "Mom, stop." Edward leaned in closer, trying to process. "Who are you?" he demanded, his heart racing, raw disbelief warming the back of his throat. Then, the moment twisted. As his father reached out, Natalia panicked. "I can't let you take him. I can't." She squeezed the trigger. Time slowed. Bang! The bullet split the air, impacting into Edward's father's shoulder. Larissa gasped, the horror striking deep, a physical punch to the gut. He fell back, horror painting his face, blood seeping down his shirt like a dark promise of chaos. "No!" Edward screamed, rushing forward, panic igniting his every move. As the world seemed to come apart at the seams, Natalia stumbled back. I didn't mean to. I thought." Edward's father lay sprawled on the pavement, eyes piercing, gaze locked on his son. "I've always watched over you. I had to," he breathed, words laced with pain. "What have you done?" Edward's voice broke, tears mixing with his fury. The truth of his father's long-standing, haunting absence twisted into a raw wound. And the suited men moved again, chaos unfurling like a storm. But the true chaos had already unraveled. Edward's father was alive, and now lay bleeding before them, stitched into a tapestry of lies that had been pulled apart. Larissa's heart raced. She looked from Edward to the father he barely knew, and in that moment, everything cracked wide open. This was more than they'd ever imagined. A truth was born from betrayal, and the very bond that connected them all began to crumble. As she turned, the sirens blared, but they were no longer just sounds of safety. They were harbingers of a deeper doom. With her heart racing, Larissa understood. This wouldn't just change their lives. It would shatter everything they believed. And then, just as the darkness swirled thicker, something unexpected happened. A figure emerged, pushing through the crowd with surprising agility. It was Clara, and she didn't have a weapon. She had a large envelope. "Everyone stop," Clara called out. She raised the envelope high, a defiant look on her face. "This changes everything." "What are you talking about?" Edward's father grunted, struggling to sit up. Clara ripped the envelope open. "This is the evidence of everything. The truth about our families." She pulled out documents, waving them frantically. The crowd shifted, confusion casting a shadow over their faces. But then came the twist. "Edward, you're not just his son. You're the heir to a fortune, tied to something much bigger than you can imagine." Shock rippled through the crowd. "An heir? To what?" Edward's voice trembled, confusion flooding his features. "Business, crime, secrets that have haunted us all. Your father isn't just anyone. He's tied to a network that crosses states, societies, and lives." Larissa felt her heart race even more. Could this be true? The noise of the crowd faded, leaving nothing but the weight of Clara's revelation. "Your identity is a part of a larger scheme, Edward. There's a reason they want you, a reason they've all hidden this from you." And then, like fireworks, the truth sparked questions in Larissa's mind. What if everything she thought she knew about Edward, about her life, was tied up in this web of lies? "What the hell, Clara?" Edward's face twisted, an emotional storm brewing. "You can't just drop that on me." "Just look," Clara shouted, flipping pages around. "This is just the beginning. Your whole life, it's all been set up. The people after you." But before she could finish, the enough-sized crackle split the tension, the crowd gasping in fear as the suited men charged forward. "Get her!" A voice boomed. And with that moment, they all realized the stakes weren't merely their lives anymore. The very fabric of their reality was on the line. Everything was different now. Nothing would be the same again. The finality of it all shattered the air, leaving them all wondering who they could trust and what their next steps would truly mean. Clara's words hung heavy in the air, but the sirens blaring in the distance sliced through the tension like a hot knife. The suited men surged forward, grabbing Edward's father, pulling him away. Edward's eyes burned with pain, confusion, and helplessness. "No," he shouted, yanking at the hold of the men. "You can't take him. You don't understand." Larissa felt every heartbeat pounding in her chest. She squeezed Edward's hand tighter, desperation flooding her. "We need to do something. They'll take him away." Clara's face was pale, but she held her ground. "Wait!" she yelled. "You can't just let them take him. Not after everything. This is how they control you." The chaos erupted around them, a maelstrom of fear and uncertainty, shouts echoing like a chorus of dread. Amid the chaos, Uncle Jim stepped forward on shaky legs. "Listen to Clara," he yelled, determination flickering as he struggled against the tide. "It's time to break free from this." Bang! Larissa flinched as another gunshot rang out, But this time it was from the helicopter above. A spotlight flashed, illuminating the panic. What is happening? Serene fear surged through the crowd, strangers colliding as they stumbled backward. "Over here, now!" Clara yelled, her voice cracking under the pressure. And without thinking, without even speaking, Larissa pulled Edward toward her. It felt like an instinct, like a primal need to protect him. "Go!" Clara shouted, motioning toward a nearby alley. They moved, feet pounding against the gritty pavement as they dodged the confusion and chaos. Edward glanced back, terror etched on his face. "What about my father?" "They'll find him. We'll come back. We have to move," Larissa urged, the urgency sparking every nerve in her body. As they darted through the shadows of the alley, something incredible happened. The lights from the helicopter swept over them, and the wind whipped with a new intensity. For a moment, it felt like the whole world shifted, and they were granted a sliver of freedom from what had chased them. "This way!" Clara guided them deeper into the alley, light fading behind as they turned another corner. Panic pulsed through Larissa, but a flicker of hope broke through. "Do you have a plan?" she panted, breathless. Clara looked back, eyes intense. "I know someone who can help us. We have to trust them." They kept going, racing through a maze of darkness and doubt. The sirens faded behind, but the shadows loomed, whispering of the uncertainty that still lay ahead. Edward stumbled slightly, hesitation gripping him. "What if they find us?" Clara steeled herself. "This isn't just about running anymore. We need to expose the truth. We can't let them silence us." Heart pounding, Larissa felt an electric charge in her chest. They had stumbled into something larger than themselves, a web spun with secrets, lies, and heartache, but there was potential for something else. The truth, if they could just reach it. Finally, Clara led them to a door at the back end of the alley. Heavy and weathered, it stood as a bastion of hope amidst the chaos. "In here, quickly." They slipped inside, the door screeching shut behind them. The sounds of the world outside faded into silence. But as they gathered their breaths, an uneasy feeling coiled around Larissa. They might have escaped for now, but the darkness still clung to them. A danger lingered, whispering of conflicts not yet resolved. In that moment, everything felt heavy yet light, a fragile balance between safety and fear. And as Larissa looked at Edward, his anguish mirrored her own. They had taken one step, but what awaited them next? The truth? The pain? The light? She squeezed his hand again, uncertainty swirling like a storm on the horizon. And as they stared into the void, one unyielding truth pulsed through the air. They could no longer escape who they were. So they would have to fight, before the darkness could reclaim them. "Hey, before we wrap this up, I need you to do something right now. Subscribe immediately to the channel, so you don't miss any of the upcoming exclusive stories. You need to be a part of this adventure. Smash that like button now. It helps the algorithm more than you know. And don't just sit there. Flood the comments with your thoughts and theories. What did you think of the ending? What's coming next? Your voice matters. Lastly, share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to know this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support and connect with this incredible story. Don't wait 1 second more.